It is a great honor to introduce to you Brigadier General Kendall Switzer.
Thank you, Renee. Thank you. Wow. Gee whiz, that's me? I don't. Thank you for being here today. Wow, where in this world do we get the opportunity to listen to young men and women talk about what leadership does for them? And I was just thinking, Lily and Simon and Evie and Joshua, thank you. That's the future of America right there. And it is our charge to make sure that that continues to develop and happen in this nation. When Renee called me to speak, initially I hadn't really rung into the Boy Scouts in a long time. But Renee's husband and I served together in the Montana Air National Guard, and we deployed together. And her husband, Gary, who is deployed right now, in our prayers. But when Renee called, I said I could not turn it down because my relationship with her husband was huge, and I had to do this. But the other thing is I dusted out the box from the day of scouting that I kind of put away, after a lot of you will, after you get a chance to go through scouting, and you start pulling it up and the memories come back. And you realize how important it is, the foundation that scouting gives all of us. And today, we not only do it for the young men that are growing up in this world, but we do it for the young girls too. And it's so important in development. As I reflect back on my entire career, everything that I did of merit started with scouting. And so I just would like to say thank you for this generation for being here. Renee, thank you for setting this up. And give me just about 10 minutes to talk about some stuff, okay? Is that all right with everybody? So here we are. Leadership and teamwork. If I spend a lot of time now, I'm retired Brigadier General from the Air Force. Worked for Martel Construction for 10 years with my brother-in-laws and this team right here. And they have the tenacity and the grit to show up this morning. My team didn't. Well, what's up with that? So we're going to have words when we're done, by the way. But we're always trying to better ourselves. But really, when you look at life right now and all the things that are going on in America and the world, this is what we need: leadership and teamwork. And where do we train people to do this? It starts with scouts. Dreams. When you were young, or much like Evie here, what do you dream of doing? What do you want to be? Where do you want to go, right? And you need somebody to share that dream with you and talk about the possibilities. So that's a picture of me as a young kid. My dad was in the Air Force. He was a sergeant. My mom is from Bozeman, and Mom and Dad met at Maelstrom Air Force Base. Believe it or not, even before it was Maelstrom. And my mom met my dad, and 5 days later, they were engaged and got married. And they stayed married all the way until Dad passed away. I don't recommend that process, really, but it was fascinating because my mom and dad were the example for me as how a husband and wife works as a team. And but Dad was one of these unique guys. So Air Force Sergeant, so he unloads airplanes, he does supply issues. He got to know every single pilot in the Air Force that came through every base that we're stationed. We moved all the time. Sometimes we move once a year, sometimes we move every other year. So I lived all over the world, to include Ankara, Turkey, for 2.5 years. But it was at Davis Mountain Air Force Base in Tucson, Arizona. I was a young scout. And one of the things in scouting is, not only do you learn about the citizenship, and you learn about leadership, and you learn about integrity, and you learn about being that person that doesn't walk away when something happens, right? Whereas we're talking as our team and realizing that, too, work is important in this world. And so there were jobs to be had. And so I delivered papers for the Arizona Daily Star, and that was a morning paper. And so my brother and I, this paper route for young men and women was important because it was a great job. And you actually got money for it, right? So I'm 13, 14 years old, great job. And my brother and I would deliver papers, and then we would go out to the golf course in the morning, at 5 in the morning after we delivered our papers, and this airplane, the U-2 Dragon Lady, would be sitting at the end of the runway, and it would just roar. and then off it would take off. And my brother and I would lay on the golf course and watch this airplane take off. And it was the coolest thing. And it was like, how do I do that? And my dad always told me, he said, if that's what you want to do, you can do it. And so he helped me get there. Scouting helped me get there. It taught me integrity. It taught me about working together as a team. It taught me about having a plan. It taught me about being prepared to tackle life and to be agile. In a world where you don't know what's going to happen next, we have the process and the ability to flex. It was that dream that led me to fly. Out of here, I wanted to go to the Air Force Academy, and so I applied to all the academies out there. And I did pretty good in school, but I wasn't the best. And I got accepted everywhere but the Air Force Academy. It's like, gee whiz, the one place I wanted to go. And that's where I learned in life, you need to work hard to try and go after your dreams. But it may not look like you think it's going to look like. And so you need the grit, and you need the tenacity and the ability to flex quickly and grab onto an opportunity and use those techniques you learn to be there. So I went to the obvious place, to the Naval Academy, and I knew nothing about the Navy. But I can tell you this, that was fascinating for me about learning about the Navy. I absolutely loved it. The other thing I liked about scouting was, as much as the young people here, the adventure that you get the opportunity to participate in was huge. It was a draw. We don't want to stop that, right? This sense of adventure. I never thought twice about putting on a backpack and taking off anywhere in the wilderness, anywhere. Why? Because I knew how to plan, I knew how to prepare, I knew how to take care of myself, I knew first aid. Where did I learn that? I learned it in scouting. And I learned how to rely on a team. And it was that teamwork out there that really, really, really resonated well with the military. After I got done with the Naval Academy, I wanted to be a Navy pilot. And again, I didn't really know much about the naval service, but the Marine Corps is part of the Navy. And I didn't realize that they're separate entities. But boy, if you tell a Marine that they're a sailor, you better stand by, because that's not going to be a pretty conversation, even though they are part of the same service. But I love the Marine Corps, because the Marine Corps, to me, I had never met Marines very much before, but they are driven by purpose and service. And the other thing about the Marines that I always thought was fascinating was, as a leader in the Marine Corps, you always make sure that the men and women under your charge eat first, have a place to sleep, and are taken care of. That is your responsibility. And you can't walk away from it. And I thought, fascinating. Everything that was taught that I learned in scouting applied in the Marine Corps. And it was huge. So I got to fly F-18s out of Beaufort, South Carolina. And we flew these airplanes all over the world. Those jets right there, that was the original model of F-18. The F-18s that the Blue Angels fly today are the Super Hornet, a little bit robusted version of that. They will be in Billings next summer. If you get out there, you want to see the show. But look at those airplanes. They look like they're flying pretty close, right? That right there is 2 Top Gun graduates. One of them's me, flying. That formation right there, as close as it looks, doesn't even begin to make the cut in the Blue Angels. So we have to train the best to get better. It's an attitude thing. When I got to the Blue Angels, so I've been flying in the Marine Corps for about 7 to 8 years. And we select our pilots in the Blue Angels ourselves. They're not assigned to us. And so they apply and we pick them. What do you think is the hardest quality to find in a fighter pilot to go on the Blue Angels? You think it's skill? Do you think it's ability to know the airplane? The hardest thing for us to discern for a pilot that comes on the Blue Angels is somebody that is exceptionally good at what they do and can work well as a team. And those 2 things. It's very hard to find people who are really good at what they do and get outside of their little bubble and work well as a team. And that's what we look for, and that's how the Blue Angels build their team. The Blue Angels is almost the oldest flight demonstration team in the world. Actually, they say it's number 2 because there's one in, I believe, Italy that was in there a little longer. But 1946, they started this team. Every single pilot that's flown in the Blue Angels is listed in a manual, and it's only one page. Every single pilot for 77 years that's been in that. It's a very unique brother and sisterhood. And it's not, and we always say we rest on the shoulders of giants. We had the tenacity to be as good as we can, but really it wasn't about us. It was a bigger picture. It was big beyond us. That's what I like about scouting, is we train people to learn, to realize that they got to be good at what they do, but really it's beyond them. It's about service. It's about preparation to take care of those next to you. That's what makes the difference. So I'd like to share this story. When I got done with Top Gun instructor after that, okay, I never wanted to be in the Blue Angels, because if you derail your career to do this for 2 to 3 years, you basically are running out of time to be a Top Gun instructor, and that's where you want to be. But somebody came to me at the organization I was with and I was instructing, Angie, and she said, Thumper, that's my call sign. She said, Thumper, the Blue Angels need a pilot and you need to apply. And I'm like, what? Like, that is completely outside of the training realm that I'm in. She says, no, you need to do it. And so I did, and I'm surprised they selected me, because I was like at the bottom of the list, I felt like. But when we fly these formations in this airplane, you get done with Top Gun, you'll fly a normal set about 10 feet apart. 10 feet. When you get to the Blue Angels, and they're training right now, in their winter training, our basic set's 3 feet. How do we do that? And we're working with the best in the world. So how do you take a team of people who are really good at what they do and make them drive that performance from 10 feet to 3 feet? Oh no, by the way, you're gonna roll it upside down, sideways, push each other. How do you do that? You do that through teamwork. You do that through a process of debriefing each other. You do that through after something that's bigger than yourselves. I always thought that was unique. And as X's watching the team train right now, we let them know that they need to get to 3 feet. And they're like, thank you for that, we're trying. And I said, well, try harder. This is the F-16 Falcon. This is the backbone, one of the backbones of the Air Force. So after I got done with the Navy, then Marines, worked for a construction company, loved that, and flew the F-16 part-time. September 11th changed everything for us. Okay, we all went on active duty, and those F-16s were flying around. In our day, the balloon would have been shot down, okay? Just got to get it out there. I know, I'll hear about that. But we went all over the world with this airplane, all over the world to defend America. But if you look at that picture, the right lower one, the pilots, we get in this airplane and we fly and we go all over. We go into Iraq, that's a mission after Iraq, a combat mission. And we come back and we get to see the beauty of the world. But we don't realize is that of the 6 jets that we're flying, or the 12 jets that we're flying, and the 12 pilots, there's hundreds of maintenance people, weapons people, people that are working to make that airplane flyable. And they don't know what's going on, because they're not flying over Iraq. They're not getting, they don't get a chance. So you have to take the time to share the story to them, all the good work that they're doing. And that's what we were doing here, is spending time with our weapons loader and crew chief. And I'm actually showing them the mission that I was flying in. I could not do that without them. I could not do that without them. And that's the thing. A high-performing team needs to take care of the team and let them know all the good that they're doing. So, how do we move forward in a dynamic world? You don't have to look too far right now to realize that we are challenged, both ethically, morally, and for just hard work, right? How do we develop people? What organization do we do so that when you raised up and you come in these businesses and these organizations, that you have a strong set of thinking and you take care of the men and women next to you, and you realize if there is a problem, you take care of it. How do you do that? You learn it here. You learn it in Scouts. Moving forward with that agility. One of the things that we do in the business world that I work in now is we look at organizations through people, process, and culture. And if you realize that Scouting takes care of all of this to train our young kids, our nieces, our nephews, our grandkids, on how to look at a world like this and do the best, and to be a person of integrity, and how to reach out when you need to talk to each other to make things done well. That's important. What we find in business is if you can master these through communication, you got a high-performing business, no matter what you do. I share this slide real quick because I want to tell you something about the Blue Angels. They honestly believe that they are the finest team in the world, even when they're not. And they believe it so much, they're actually willing to look at each other and say, are we actually the best? Or do we just think we're the best? And let's ask people outside, are we really the best? And so we think we're the best, so much so that we're willing to have vulnerability to ask ourselves whether we are or not. Does that make sense? And so that humility, relentless pursuit of perfection, no matter what you do, and within it, you have enthusiasm of the work, and then the expectation of judgment, maturity, and commitment. So when we listed these things that made us important to make it a team, this is it. Does this sound like scouting? Making a difference every day. That sounds like scouting to me. Accountable and innovative leaders. Those are the things that when we looked at each other in the Blue Angels, we'd say, that's what we want to be. And what we find in business, and you know this, families, business, and times, is strong and trusted process and culture. It takes care of its people. It takes care of it, reaches out when they need help. When they need somewhere to go, they don't abuse them. They take care of them. If there's something out there. And I admire the Scouts for realizing that organizationally we had something we had to do. The Navy did too in Tailhook in 1991. They had to change because the organization was not becoming an environment where men and women could feel safe and deliver what we asked them to do. And so scouting is doing this, and we need to support it because there's no other place, there's not many other places where young men and women are going to learn this in a diverse culture right today. So it's all about teamwork. Be prepared. If you look at that picture on the lower right, do you remember what that is? That's the Hudson River, right? That's Miracle on the Hudson, right? Scouting teaches you to be prepared. Aviation, good pilots are prepared for any disaster that happens in the air because you don't have many places to run. And I thought it was fascinating that that's where you learn to think and prepare for the unknown. And then the mental agility to flex is required to get the job done and making sure that the men and women that are next to you are taken care of and they're on the team. Very important. How about that for teamwork and trust? You think there's a relationship there? Those two live and die with each other. It's a Special Forces airman jumping out with his dog. And they're a team forever. Do we build teams like that? That's what we want to do. These old guys on the left there, that's us 30 years after we got off the team, sharing stories. Good teams, good people, good organizations, good families get together and reflect on the things they do, and they honor the people that are there in the present and support them. That's important. That's what we do for Scouts. When Renee called me and I pulled out the box and blew off the dust and remembered the memories, it's like that is our responsibility to provide an opportunity so that we get a whole list of Lilies and Simons up here that tell their stories about what they're doing. And 10 years from now, and 20 years from now, and 30 years from now, they'll be up here and we're like, wow, you did that? That's cool. So thank you for that. I'd like to share this picture real quick, and I know we gotta go, but if you look at that, what you see right there on the right, that's the Thunderbirds, the Blue Angels, and the Snowbirds. You will probably never see those teams together like that again, because they're just too busy. And but that was a flyover of Boston and New York during COVID when we had to cancel all the air shows. And we brought the teams together just to provide something for America to latch onto, that there is good out there. And it was kind of cool. Now, we would actually critique each other on which team flies closer and best, but that's a different story. People, process, and culture hemmed by care and commitment for the men and women around you, that gives you the results we want. And we find in business today, if we can share this with an organization and they embrace it and take care of it, they will go places. They will be the place that you want your kids and your grandkids and your nieces and nephews to work at. So as I realize, I sit back and I think about the things that are important to us, to our kids, to our family, to those around us and our friends. It's this: leadership and teamwork, a sense of adventure, citizenship and character. And where do you learn that? Where do you learn that? You learn it at your family, and you learn it at Scouting. We can support this organization because I can tell you it made a difference in my life. I'm sure it's made a difference in yours. Thank you for having me here today. I appreciate you letting me share a story or two. I am around anytime if anybody needs to grab me and talk about it. There is an air show next summer in Billings with the Blue Angels in August. So if you get a chance, please come out. So thank you, everybody, for today. I can't tell you how much I appreciate all you're doing and how much Scouting has done for us and our nation.